Hello, I'm Professor Matthew Rotella, and in this tutorial I want to go over using the Loft tool with NURBS Curves to make a variety of things. I'm going to focus on making parts of a lamp for my main demo, which I don't plan on making the whole thing because like Loft is good for some things, but making the whole lamp with the Loft tool would be a little bit much. In any case, the Loft tool basically works like this, where I usually prefer to just use concentric circles and make things with NURBS curves. So like I made NURBS curve here. You can always go up to create, NURBS primitives, and circle if you want to adjust things ahead of time. In any case, I got a circle and I can duplicate it, pull it up, I can scale it out, duplicate it, pull it up, scale it in, and whatever order you select the circles in determines which these will be your input curves for the Loft, determines how things will end up getting created. So, like if I can select the bottom and then work my way up. Then if I go to Surfaces and Loft, you can see it just connects between the shapes, which by default, let me reset my settings, it'll be set to cubic here on the surface degree, and then when I hit apply, I'll get this round shape here, which I can also hit close, and it'll make a closed piece of geometry. And I can also go in and select my circles, and I can edit things after the fact. And if I want things to be smoother with my lofted surface, I can even increase my section spans going around, and I'll get an even smoother curve out of my lofted surface. And so anyway, it's very good for creating like you can create like straight tubing with it, but it can also be good for making sort of an accordion formation, which I'll show you how that could function relatively easily. So if I get a circle like so, and I just make a smaller circle within it, and I'm gonna make a sort of a straighter, like a straight walled in sections accordion formation, but you could make a just straight up accordion in out formation with this. And anyway, I'm gonna go up to edit, duplicate special. Let's see. Yeah, I'll make 10 copies where I translate each copy 10 units in Y, and yeah, geometry type copy. Alright, so I got 10 copies of my circles, and I can just sort of work my way up, like I said, with my input curves. And so I'll go out, in, then the small, big, big, small, small, big, big, small, and just continue like that all the way up, because this makes my small connect to my small, which then works its way out to my larger circle, which then creates a wall up to my next larger circle, and then inwards, and then that connects the inner wall. And hopefully all will become clear in a second if you're not already picking up on what's happening here. So I made my selection in the order that I want each circle to connect to the next circle in. So now surfaces, Loft, I'm going to set my surface degree to linear just so I get some straight spans, and I'll hit apply. And whoop, I don't want close to be on. I just want it to be the single polygon wall. And you can see just like that, I have this shape with my smaller circles connecting to each other and then working their way outwards and then connecting my bigger circles to each other. So this can be good for like a variety of tubing, or if you do in fact want to make like an accordion or just anything that has that sort of accordion fold in it. This thing can be very functional. And now, ideally you don't want to keep it as a NURBS surface, so you would end up doing modify, convert NURBS to polygons, which I'm not going to want triangles, I'm going to want quads, and instead of doing standard fit, I'm going to do general, because these here, the initial tessellation controls, these will give you your subdivisions either vertically and horizontally for how your polygon geometry is created. So like I could go 12 in one, 8 in the other, and I can see what I end up needing. So here's my polygon geometry, and since I have 12 in my U, I have 12 vertical subdivisions going around, and I can change this after the fact here in my attribute editor, giving more one way to get more subdivisions going one way, or more the other way to get this as smooth as I want. So you can sort of generate as much geometry as you need in order to get the result that you want, even after the fact. But this will always be linked to my original geometry, or my original revolved surface in curves, unless I either make a duplicate of this, or I could go to delete by type and delete its history, at which point if I move these two things, it is no longer effective. Anyway, time to get into modeling said lamp, as I mentioned earlier. So I'm just going to get rid of all of this, and I'll also point out that like it doesn't have to be with it doesn't have to be exclusively with circles. Like I can get this wily looking curve here, and then select curve to curve, and go to surfaces, loft, and then I'll loft myself a wall. So if you're making some strange shaped walls or individual polygon faces, like you could use your NURBS curves to like trace a shape and then loft between them. As long as you know what you're doing, these can be very useful building tools. But for the purpose of this demo, I'm mainly just going to stick to concentric circles. Just it's where I tend to see the loft tool being most useful with that sort of NURBS surface beginning. Anyway, let's see. I have, so I'm going to bring in my reference imagery of my lamp. So image plane, import image. I'm importing it into my my front orthograph, which, where is it? This is the one I want. Which, this isn't the best reference image because I'm at sort of like a 3/4 angle with it. where I would prefer more of a straight side-on orthograph, but for the purposes of just showing you how this tool could be used, like, this will do. It'll be useful enough. Anywho, okay, so I'll create a circle, which maybe I'll line this up a little bit better at the beginning here, but anyway, I'll raise my circle up and I'll get it to be the general width of my lamp base. I'll put it down. Maybe I'll do this for my orthograph that I imported into. I'll put it down, hit Control D, and then raise that up to the wall. And I can even sort of start creating like this little subtle curve that happens using these, where I could duplicate this NURBS circle, and then I could scale it in just a little bit, and then have that come up, and then I can use that to sort of smoothly create that little curve in. But anyway, now from this one, which this is another place that these sort of shine, is I can duplicate this circle, which, pardon me for switching between my guys so rapidly. I can duplicate this circle, and now this is off center, and I can, well, one, I can make sure that what I'm working with here is the right width, but I can move this off center, and I can place my opening right where I want it to be. And then I can even pull it down in, and then I can have that sort of hole going into my geometry, just like how I would perhaps want. And now I'll do my lofting. So I can basically just go in the order that I created them. So I can just select down the line here, and then surfaces, and yep, just have it set to linear, and loft. And now this is the geometry I get, which I could end up closing off relatively easily if I were to change this into polygon geometry. So like I could hit edit, or pardon me, modify, and then convert NURBS to polygons, and then I'll just leave these settings I had from before for right now. I'll hit apply. Let's get that out of the way. Let's bring this over, see what we're working with, and like I said, I can get things as smooth or as simple as I want them to be. Like I can keep this as just the straight geo that I basically had to begin with, but now I have my 12 subdivisions, or I can make it more if I want it to be smoother to begin with. In any case, I could just do go edit. I can do my delete by type history. So this isn't connected to my original lofted surface. But now if I want to like close this off, I can just use my poly modeling, extrude it, scale in that extrusion, and then depending on what you want, I could hit merge to center from here and I would get a pole in there, or I could use mesh fill hole and I could turn this into quad geo using my multi-cut tool. Yeah, and I can do the same thing down here on the bottom. Hit extrude, scale it in, mesh, fill hole, and if I want to turn this into a pole, I could always do that after the fact. But essentially I have a cylinder that was sculpted into this shape, complete with like these perfectly round holes, rather quickly using my Loft tool. Now the advantage of this being that you get a lot of control over exactly how much geo you want to put into your surfaces and how curved you want them to be. I'm going to just leave that over here for right now. And see, now from here, if I wanted, I could also I could duplicate this NURBS curve here, and I could group all of this, Control G, throw that into a group. I could say that this is my like lamp base curves, so I at least know what I'm working with. And I can use this to start building out like what this shape should be if I want, like Control D, get that to be the right thickness. Now I'm matching it up with the front of this circle so that I know that that should be my judge of the thickness from the perspective that I'm going with. Although since my perspective is tilted slightly down, this will be somewhat incorrect. But excuse, scale it in, and I could sort of curve it off a little bit if I want. Hit Control D. Anyway, and I could use alright. Yeah, I can make another lofted surface here. That should match up pretty well. And maybe I don't want this one to be in here, but I can use that and maneuver that to really easily change how this curve should happen. But in any case, moving along, the main thing that I want to get to is just shaping this bell part of the shade before I end up calling this a tutorial, because I mainly just want to demonstrate the tool just so you can see how it's useful for a few different things, which, you know, I could use concentric circles, like all the way, Control D, like all the way up the line here, for modeling. Yeah, like like I could use concentric circles all the way up the line here for modeling like this part of the neck of the lamp. Just have them Control D. and just keep like rotating and placing them. Going all the way up. But remember, you don't want to leave your geometry as lofted surfaces or as just the NURBS. You want to make sure that you're properly converting to polygons so that it's easier to model and work with your mesh later. I could loft that, I could change my section spans, but also in this case I'd probably would want to use cubic in my loft settings here and loft it. Ooh, that got wonky. Never mind. It did not perform how I wanted it to. Yeah. But anyway, this would be more well suited for extruding along a curve using, which I'm going to demonstrate in a different tutorial. But, well, I suppose I might as well demonstrate it here, which, getting rid of all of these, which I don't quite need. And then if I go into my curves, and let's use the EP curve for the sake of being quick about things, even though the Bezier curve would give me more control. Okay, or perhaps I'll use the Bezier curve because I'm going to need that control, turns out. And just sort of work my way up the curve. I can change my control vertices, but in any case, select this, and now when I go to curves, or rather surfaces, and I hit extrude, it'll extrude my curve that I put in, or extrude my surface based off of my original circle that I had to model with, and pull that up based off of the curve that I put in. Anyway, the last thing that I really wanted to demonstrate with the Loft tool was just modeling, like I said, that sort of bell on the lampshade. So what I'm gonna do is, just for the sake of making this a bit easier on myself, which I can always adjust things later, is I'm gonna try and adjust and reposition things based on my reference later, but I'm gonna try and reposition this so that this is like perfectly flat. I'm trying to use my grid lines to help me do that, and that should be good. Anyway, I'll make a circle, just like I've been doing. I'll scale it to be the right width that I need. can also do this here in my perspective view, like so, and then just duplicate it, scale it out, duplicate it, bring it down, and I can just go 1, 2, 3, select it, surfaces, loft. In this case, I do want it set to cubic, I believe. I'll hit loft, and do I still have? No, okay. Let's just play. Okay. All right. And now my normals are facing the wrong way, but it's okay. I can always fix that later. The important thing being that I have a curve that rather well matches this bell, and when you're trying to make these bulbous shapes, using the Loft tool can be very useful, especially like you can make these adjustments after the fact and get the curves to fit just right. And really this is just playing to the strengths of using curves, which any sort of curved surface, you can help get a nice, very smooth curved surface using curves, which I can then go modify, or modify, convert NURBS to polygons, and I'll just stick with, I again want to make sure it's quads. I want to use tessellation method general so that I can get some cleaner geo, because if I just leave it at standard fit, the sort of thing that I'm going to get when I select my lofted surface and hit apply, well, maybe it wasn't so bad this time, but modify, center pivot, but oftentimes when you just use standard fit, you'll get edges terminating in weird places. In any case, I'm just going to keep it at what I was at before. Center pivot to it, and I can mesh display, reverse, get my normals facing the right way. I can and with my like I said before, I can change exactly how smooth I want all this to be. And if I want to give it some thickness, I can always just, well, first I think I'm going to want to edit, delete by type history. If I want to give it a little thickness, I can always just either duplicate it and scale it and then bridge the two together, or I can just hit extrude and pull things in. And then in this case, I've reversed my normals yet again. So mesh display, reverse, and I have my lampshade with thickness and vertices. I always flatten this out like so. And you can nest all your little bits in there. Anyway, I hope this was helpful and educational. and perhaps not the best showing of the Loft tool's power, but I can at least hope that you see how it can be useful for a variety of different things, and how it is just another tool that is worth having in your modeling toolkit. And you don't have to worry about leaving all these curves around your outliner after you're done using these various curve and surface tools. You can either just delete them after you're done using them, or you could like group them all into like a group and call it like curve utilities or something like that, so you can always go back and regenerate your base geometry that you're working with. But yeah, anyway, hope this was helpful, hope you learned, and hope you'll join me next time.